Hey, so I didn't really feel like making a video today, but here I am. I thought I'd just turn on the camera and see what happened because sometimes I feel the need to just, again, just turn on the camera and just talk. And so something that's been that's been on my mind lately has been coming up in what I call what I've called in the past this process of introspection that I have incorporated into my day-to-day life. And it's a matter of it's really a spiritual practice fundamentally, and centerpiece to this practice of introspection is what I call this this contemplation exercise that I do, where essentially I sit down for a half hour, 30 minutes or more, and close my eyes and usually put in earplugs, and I just kind of go into the void, I guess you could say, and just observe and see what comes up. And a lot of times this can, or sometimes this could bring up things that are less than pleasant or irritating, and that's certainly been the theme lately for me, where I've been reflecting back a lot of my past experiences throughout my life. And I know it's not good to dwell on the past, especially if it's a negative aspect of your past. And but I still feel like the past is there. These thoughts and these impressions and these feelings we have are there for a reason. Um, and this pain is there for a reason, to teach us something. It's to show that, well, something needs to be addressed, or something needs to be observed. And I've said also that true courage is observation, as a good friend once told me one time, and that's really stuck with me. And that's really how I define courage. Is just it's fundamentally just a matter of observation and observing what's there, instead of just being, taking, I guess, the easy route, and numbing yourself, and just uh, or just sticking your head in the sand, or sticking your head up your ass, which is what most people seem to do. They don't seem to want to, to look at things the way that they are. And that's why things get, just progressively worse in terms of how society is being degraded and degenerated. And people care like it's like the worst things. It's like the worst things get. People just seem to care less. People care less like the worst things get. It's really kind of fucked up if you think about it. However, but it's just reflecting back on my past, and going back to childhood, even I've always had this sort of feeling. Sometimes it was subtle, sometimes not so subtle, where I just knew that something just wasn't right. Something just wasn't right with the world and with my life, and just the way things were going, and how I was being led through life. Um, and I never had this feeling validated. I never had like a safe space, if you will, to really express this concern, or these doubts that I had. And because of this, I feel like a lot of kids grow up, a lot of boys in particular, because I feel like that the education system, yeah, it sucks for everybody. It's an indoctrination, uh, just racket, really, is what it is. However, it's particularly targeted towards boys, because we know that the vast majority of kids who are class clowns, kids who are marginalized in schools, sent to detention, troubled youths, if you will, they're boys, right? They're kids who are who are told that something's wrong with you, and the parents are told something's wrong with your son, and because he's not fitting into this mold, into this model, and he's not going along to get along. And so as a result, the vast majority of young kids who are put on psychotropic medications are boys. And I think that trend continues throughout adolescence, and throughout adulthood. And it's I was fortunate enough to never be put in that situation. Although, if I had worse parents growing up, I could, things could have always been worse. I look back, yeah, things were pretty fucked up. Things weren't perfect. Things weren't up to my standard. If I were a parent, um, I just things just Yeah, I'm not even going to get into that in this video. However, the problem is that a lot of kids have, and what I had growing up, I never really had a space to really express myself, to express my concerns. I was always told that, well, I just needed to sort of deal with things the way that they were because this is just how things are. You know, it was never the fact that, well, we should change things. Yes, things are really fucked up, and this is how things are now, and we should work to change things, because things aren't right. Or at the very least, things could be better, and we should work to change these things. And that was never like an alternative. That was never an option that we were given, that I was given growing up. It was just, oh, we got to go through this meat grinder, this bitch education system, and just go along with however we're led through life, and just go along to get along. And if anything, that's more of a of a female, of a feminine type of trait, where it's just going along to get along. And it's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, and there is a time and place for that. However, you got to have principles too. You have to have a fucking backbone. You have to have a spine. And most people, they don't have that. Like, they're just spineless. There's no, people don't live their lives with principles. They live their lives just to to coddle their ego and their creature comforts, and to seek creature comforts. That as long as things aren't affecting them directly in the moment, as long as the shit's not on their doorstep, they're not really going to care, until it affects them directly. And that's really sad to say. That's really a despicable state of affairs that we're living in right now, where I can look back at my life and say, yeah, you know what, as much as I can complain and whatever, and look back and say that things weren't up to my standards, like I've said, things could have been, like I said, a lot worse. And a lot of people, there's always somebody who has it worse, and much worse. There's a lot of people who had it a lot worse than I did. And that inspires me, that motivates me even more to talk about things, to get things out, to put ideas out there. And then people say, well, oh, if you start to imply that you're critical, or you have reservations or concerns about something, then people want to just jump down your throat and say that, oh, well, who are you? We're like, if you were president, like, what would you do? Or, you know what I mean? They try to make it this sort of all or nothing mentality, where you have to, just because you're critical of something, you automatically have to have like an A to Z fucking step-by-step plan solution, like master plan solution, to put in place, or something like that, and it's just ridiculous. People are just so, most people have more double standards and hypocrisies than they do fucking brain cells. And that's something that I've really come to the conclusion to, just with people in my day-to-day life, with family in particular. And it could be a really difficult situation, because I've grown up with this sort of, like I said, this feeling that something just wasn't right. I mean, now I know that there's something just not right with this world, and this life the way that it is. And reflecting back throughout every stage and every facet of my life, I've always had this feeling to some degree, but it was just a matter of how much I was willing to numb myself, or to cover it up, or ignore it, or whatever. And I realized that ignoring it never made things better. It never made things better in my individual life, and it certainly doesn't make things better outwardly, collectively, for the collective. So, an introspective individuals make for an introspective, society or family or circumstance, and that's something that is just severely lacking. And that's really fundamentally why things just get progressively worse and worse. And a lot of it has to do with censorship too nowadays, where people such as myself, who want to express ideas and these sorts of things, are given less and less opportunity to do so, because like I've said, the censorship is being ramped up. The whole concept of censorship is really an insidious and despicable ideology, because it's the most, freedom of speech and freedom of expression are the most fundamental things. And when you have these essentially these tech oligarchs like Google, YouTube, which are the same thing, and Facebook, Twitter, all these things, and all these platforms, and they have these essentially what are essentially monopolies on the public square, if you will, where people aren't allowed to express certain ideas. Whereas in a previous video I spoke about a certain ethnic group that won't be named here, where you're not allowed to criticize them, right, without being labeled all sorts of racist, white supremacist, Nazi, whatever, where just for simply pointing out facts, you could state facts, you can question history, which should be a fundamental right, a fundamental dignity of any human being in a free and open society, in a true free and open society. However, people are being persecuted. People are being censored. People are being censored and ultimately persecuted. Not least of all in the United States, but it's still pretty bad in the United States. There are actually countries in Europe and I know Canada that actually have hate speech laws where you could actually get locked in a fucking cage for expressing certain ideas. And yeah, it's just it's disgusting. It's completely, absolutely disgusting. And the more people you try to tell about this, most people just they really don't give a shit. Anyhow, I'm going to stop here for today, and hope this finds you well, as always. And yeah, anything you want to share, feel free to share it in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.